Welcome to Let's Talk Ball. I'm Thad Brown along with Carl Jones. We're here every single week breaking down the X's and the O's, watching the film from every single Bills game. Today we're talking about Bills and Jags from London. And Carl, story A1 from this was the Bills offense that had rolled through their last three games, had dominated, had looked nearly unstoppable, suddenly couldn't move for the majority of this game. Scored 20 points, but a lot of that was late when it was kind of out of hand, lipstick on pig stuff. Give me your overall initial reactions about what stopped this Bills offense against Jacksonville.
The jet lag, of course. It was the
Oh, yeah, that's right. They played in London. Jacksonville's there a week early. Of course, that's the reason why everything. It wasn't had anything to do with the team. It's only the circumstances that are around it. I'm sure the refs probably hosed him too.
No, of course.
Outside of that, though.
I thought Jacksonville, like we always talk about on here, the other team gets paid too. And one thing that stuck out early on when you watch the film, Jacksonville really didn't allow much yak opportunities for the Bills. When a guy, especially on the flat, remember last week where Dalton Kincaid pushed off Javon Holland with a nice little stiff arm? That wasn't going this weekend. Those Jags defenders did a good job of tackling his space. And then also the Jags, previously to this week, I know they don't have a lot of big names, even though their left end is a former first overall pick. But regardless, they stopped the run coming into this game, and they kind of discouraged the Bills from going back at it this game. So I thought the Jags played downhill, aggressive, and I guess would die with the consequences of playing that aggressive. And it worked for, I would say, the first. Honestly, the only reason, not the only reason, but the Jags played aggressive until the last two drives of the game where they just sat back. Like, it wasn't like the Bills found something out. They just stopped bringing all those exotic pressures. Like, that's how I feel about how that turned out.
You talk about the Jaguars, like, attacking and living with the consequences. I think that's a perfect way to talk about it, because the thing that really stood out to me is how many different types of blitzes and how much the Jags kept on going over and over. We're going to run five. We're going to drop an edge rusher and run a linebacker. We're going to run. They had one, I'm not sure this was a blitz, maybe it was just like a spy, but late in the game, they ran a safety from 20 yards back after the snap on what looked like a blitz. They were pulling everything out, but like to your point, you know, the Bills scoring drive here, they ran 6 in the first snap. Here are the rest of the snaps on the second touchdown, first of the fourth quarter. 4-man rush, 4-man rush, 4-man rush, 4-man rush, 5-man, 4-man, run play, 4-man, 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 4-man. So they did nothing. 2 blitzes on that last drive, and one was the first snap, which was drew a holding penalty. You know, so to your point, when Jacksonville was attacking, the Bills had 1 touchdown in 8 or 9 possessions, and then when they stopped, that's when the Bills scored. But at that point, it didn't matter. I thought the Jags did very rarely do we see anyone run zone defense better than the Bills do it, because Sean McDermott coaches it excellently, and you've got, for the most of these years that McDermott's been here, Micah Hyde, Jordan Poyer, Trey White running it. Now, you didn't have all those pieces in this game, but Jacksonville did a much better job using zone to constrict options, to take away what the Bills normally do. I thought there were multiple snaps where, you know, the Bills who want to run a lot of 5 to 7 to 10-yard stuff, the Jags cluttered that. The Bills wanted to flood one side of the field. The Jags cluttered that well, too. So I think the scheme, and I don't know the Jags defensive coordinator off the top of my head,
right.
I thought that the scheme that Jacksonville had dreamed up for this was much better than what the Bills had.
For the first time outside of the Jets game, and I don't have the numbers in front of me, I wish I did, it didn't seem like some team, they were living in some too high world where they were willing to let the Bills dink and dump it down the field. They were sitting in 1 high for a lot of those snaps.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, obviously I'm paying attention to Andre Cisco in the middle of the field, but he was back there.
That's your boy.
That's my boy, but like he's 20 yards deep and there's no one next to him. Like there's no safety back there. So they really took it to the Bills. They weren't content with saying, oh, we'll let you have 5 yards. We'll let you have 8. Like, no, we're going to contest everything, whether it's the flat, the middle of the field. And for the first time in a month, that's what the Bills saw. And the game plan kind of felt like that too, where they thought that they were going to be able to just dink and dump it down the field like they've seen in the past, or been able to do in the past. And the Jags were like, we're not going for none of that. If you want to go attack deep, be my guest, but none of the other stuff is flying.
It seemed like their defensive scheme was complicated too. I saw a lot of rotating coverages. I mean, there was one play, fourth quarter, the Bills ran a man in motion, and if I remember correctly, the nickel dropped back into a safety mode. The safety came up on the other side to play like a shorter nickel corner, and you know, it was the type of play where they run the motion, the Bills snap it, and Josh is play faking. And when he turns around, I don't think he had any clue what the defense was, because there's no way he could have known with the adjustments that made. Now, the flip side, again, like you said, there were consequences. There were times, and multiple times, when the Jags blitzed, Josh Allen saw it coming and said, all right, I'm just going to throw it right back over your head, and it was a quick 7 to 10 yards. There were multiple times where I thought the Jags blew coverages, which to me is a result of, if you're trying to play the elite, Harvard, 8th level defense, you're going to make some mistakes. So, it wasn't perfect, but it was complicated enough. Individual player-wise, Dion Dawkins had to have the longest film session on Monday. Josh Allen is good, and we saw a lot of good Josh Allen in this game.
Man, I mean, early on, none of the short stuff was flying, but also the short stuff wasn't flying because they were getting whooped, like up front. And obviously Dion is one of those 5 guys, but you can go across the board. I know that there was a play action rep where miscommunication with either Morris or Torrance, but the guy ran scot-free, a deep tackle ran right up the middle and forced Josh to have an errant throw, or not even an errant throw, he just, I think, threw it away. So across the board, miscommunication, and kudos to the Jags for forcing some of those errors. I mean, the first drive of the second half, a nickel just run scot-free.
Yep.
And forces Josh Allen to get off the field earlier than he would like to. So, I mean, the Jags scheme did a good job, but I mean, at some point, this is week 5 going into week 6. You will like that the Bills can be able to pass things off and also just win a rep one-on-one because, I mean, Josh Allen was taken to the Dion, and there was no complicated stunt or nothing. It's just me against you. I'm going to go get your quarterback.
And Josh Allen won. I mean, if they went head-to-head 15 times on a pass rep, Josh Allen won 13 of them, and didn't just win them a little, won them cleanly, won them dangerously.
He won one so dangerously, he actually got 15 yards for it, and he have a nice little fine on Friday for it.
Oh, the terrible call, though. I mean, no need for – now, the refs made up for it on the offensive pass interference to Diggs 2 plays later. Yeah. Those 2 calls are both terrible, but they balance each out very nicely. Other than that, O'Cyrus Torrence, his worst game yet, although I didn't think it was as bad as I thought it would look. The 2 holding penalties he got at the start of the second to last drive, one was a play where I think he gets tripped, he's falling backwards, and just kind of grabs the guy and brings him down with him, And the second one, I almost want to make a different category for what I call scramble holds. Because when you're a defender or an offensive lineman, you're backing up, right? And you're trying to make sure that defender in front of you doesn't get behind you. But you don't realize that the quarterback is suddenly not behind you anymore, he's over there. The defender's trying to release, but you're locked him. When he releases, if you still have that lock, even for an instant, it's an immediate hold. And I don't know how you, and I really want to talk to Mitch Morse about this, I don't know how you not do that. It's so one of the Torrance's holds were that, and I almost mentally say, all right, well, that's not the type of hold you're really worried about.
No, I agree with that. I've always wanted to ask the O-lineman that, hey, do you go back and film and say, hey, that's not my fault, blame your quarterback for running around?
Exactly, yeah. Mitch Morse not very good. The Dalton Kincaid, he's non-existent in the run game thing continued. Now the run game in general wasn't existent, but the Bills were making a concerted effort to keep him off the field for running plays, to stay away from him. He did have one play late in the game where I thought he blocked one okay, but it's a problem when you have a guy that you want to make a big part of the offense, but you won't use one half of the playbook when he's on the field because he's such a liability blocking, and he has remained that level of liability so far.
Especially if he's not going to be a huge threat in the passing game, which you got him out there for anyways, which is a whole different issue in terms of there are reps of him getting open, but then Josh Allen said, you're open, but I like Stephon Diggs instead. So, whether that's Josh being more comfortable with Dalton, whether that's Dalton winning all of his reps, so then he will go to him in those situations. Regardless, if you're going to take you out half of the time, those reps that you are in there, we're going to need you to contribute in a fashion. I'm going to look at it more going forward. But there's something to be said about the effectiveness that they have under center that they just didn't go with it at all this game.
See, they
didn't do it until a play 12, which kind of shocked me.
Because in the last game, and I went back and looked at it, I always think there's circumstantial stuff with under center that's helping it out. Last game, the Gabe long play at the end of the game was a blown coverage.
Right.
In this game, they had 2 big ones that were the Diggs deep one was a blown coverage.
Right.
Though Kincaid went over the middle. Well, I don't know if it's a blown coverage. They might have just been fortunate the middle linebackers chasing Morris,
right,
expecting him to leak, and he goes to block, and then all of a sudden Kincaid's by himself, you know? Now, I mean, if you want to tell me that 12 is creating some of those blown coverages, I listen to that.
I agree. No, it does because you're isolating guys. Stephon Diggs, you can't cover Stephon Diggs with 2 people when he's under center.
No, but the problem is that you've got a safety who's coming down, taking the out, and the corner's supposed to sync with Diggs, and he doesn't. I mean, the reason Diggs is open is because the corner who's on him, now it looked like to me, was he playing cover 4 and he's just trying to get a deep quarter and thinking that he's got another guy in a deep quarter, not realizing that guy came down?
Right.
Either way, the guy who was on Diggs didn't stay with Diggs. The guy who you would think would take him after the corner let him go chased down to a lower route. So to me, that's, I mean, how is 12, you're going to tell me how 12 is causing that.
Well, I don't know if it's 12. I just know when they're under center.
Or under center, yeah.
They have I think the 7th best rushing game in the NFL. They're 25th shotgun. And then they are by far the best team passing when they're under center. Like they're in the top right, and then like the next closest team is like San Fran, who has the best offense in the NFL, but like they do it for different reasons. So like, regardless of how they're getting there, the numbers kind of speak from. We'll see how it kind of correlates over the course of the season.
I know, but again, if you can, and how many times do they run under center? They might have 50 snaps under center this year, or something like that. When I watch them under center, the under center success, like another under center play for them is the James Cook play from last week, where what they're trying to run is stopped, and then Josh is Josh and trying to runs around and flips the Cook out of the backfield.
The left tackle in front of him got beat like a drum.
No, I understand that. I mean, but I mean, like in terms of, if I'm Ken Dorsey, and you're saying to me, hey, under center, you're X number of yards, X number of plays.
Right.
But I'm watching the film and I'm saying, well, yeah, this play is because what I tried to do didn't work, and then Josh went out and did a thing, got 50 yards.
Right.
How much does that change the numbers? Especially when, they don't run center. I'd have to ballpark it, 30% of the time? That's not about right?
They don't go, even when they were good at it, they still don't go under a ton.
Right.
And I also think some of that might be just a Josh comfort thing. Like, not every quarterback likes going under center. Like Burrow hates it.
Right.
Now, granted, that's the reason why the Bengals offense is so static, because he just sits there the whole game.
In the pocket, yeah, right.
But that's a whole different debate on just comfortability and stuff like that. But there's something to be said, I know, when a guy's under center in terms of the numbers that you play on the back end, as opposed to when I can read his drop out of shotgun. I do know that. Like, all vertical stems out of under center, I know as a corner, it's like, oh, God. Now, I don't know about the front seven. Never sat in a meeting when they was under center. But I do know if you want to, the way we like to describe it, if you wanted to isolate a receiver, put your quarterback under center, because now I can't read his drop anymore. If I'm playing zone and I'm reading a quarterback's drop, I can read his 3-7-5 step and jump on anything.
Right.
If he's under center, all those steps go out the dang window, because all I got is him, and I can't read his steps anymore and determine what route this receiver is running. So that, from that perspective, that is the one thing that I do know from that. Now, guys in the box, I have no idea.
Right.
Yeah, or even safety for that matter, because I never played safety and cared about that, I guess you can say.
Let's talk about the defense now. We have raved about Ed Oliver in this space. What are we on, game 5? So 4 out of 4 games so far. To me, he was at another level in this game. He was not only dominant, but the most consistently dominant I have ever seen him against the run and the pass. He talked about the fact, I did an interview with him a couple weeks ago about, what's made you different this year, and he said, I'm just unblockable. In this game, it was just about true. I mean, he was blowing plays up, going through double teams, getting in the backfield on pass plays. When Daquan Jones left with the injury, you didn't notice it as much because Ed Oliver was playing good enough for the both of them. And I will say this, I thought Tim Settle had a pretty darn good game as well. Jordan Fields made a couple plays, but to me, Settle was the more consistent problem and consistent penetrator. So, Carl, I think even without Jones, if we get more of this from the tackles, I think they're going to be fine.
I mean, we've talked about ad nauseum in this space. You need your dudes to be dudes. And Oliver's a dude. So when you lose a fellow dude next to you in Daquan Jones, I need you to take it up another notch. And boy, I mean, whether it was the running game, like you just said, passing reps where Trevor Lawrence had to move off his spot just enough to where he couldn't hit the throw that he wanted. That's the stuff that Ed Oliver won't show up in the stat sheet for, although he did get to make the play late in the fourth. Was that the third, fourth? Whenever the fumble with Lawrence. But that stuff's going to show up in the stat sheet, and that's all cute and stuff. But he was making plays throughout that game where it was like, man, I see why they gave him an extension and they got him at a good number at this point.
Let's see, the sack fumble with Ed Oliver, what do I have that as? Because I don't think he was the one who made that play, kind of sort of. You know what it was? The perfect transition here. Let's talk defensive ends, because that play to me was Kingsley Jonathan. He blew around his tackle, forced Lawrence to scramble, and then Oliver was there to clean it up. Like, the way I grade pressures, you have to actually affect the quarterback with something you do. If you're standing there and someone else chases the quarterback to you, I don't give a pressure for that. So on the Ed Oliver sack, I don't have Ed Oliver with a pressure because Kingsley Jonathan was doing the work. Now, he's not number one on the ends, but I do want to start with him because, as a guy who's been pressed into service a little bit lately, he has been, I think, more than serviceable and was a problem in this game.
We're going to talk about players later on in this, but, not getting a lot of reps, not a lot of snaps and all that good
Using
type of
those
stuff.
as an excuse for those other players we're going to talk to in a minute. Yeah.
Exactly. Like, nah, Kingsley Jonathan, when he's out there, his name's called and he's making plays. Especially, you know, in the Jags offensive line they aren't world beaters. It was Cam Robinson's first game back from.
And he looked very not Cam Robinson this game. Yeah,
I think he had the gambling thing too going on. But regardless, first game back, it didn't matter. Kingsley made plays, whether it was disruptive in the running game, timely stuff against Trevor Lawrence in the passing game. I know Kingsley felt like that because Trevor beat him a couple times at Clemson, so I know that that definitely was on his mind a little bit. But regardless, that was encouraging to see, especially with all those missing bodies. You just need guys to step it up a bit.
A.J. Epinesa, good, shocker, was good, looked good on film. I think even a little better on film than they looked in the game. Von Miller was nothing. You know, now he didn't play a lot, but there wasn't a rep where I saw 40 doing much of anything. I'm like, wow, that was old Von Miller. I think he's got a ways to go. Speaking of a ways to go, if you're here, folks, for the positive portion of the Bills' defense, that is now concluded because the rest of this won't be that. The thing that stood out to me when watching the back seven, and you consider no Trey White, no Matt Milano, linebackers rotating left and right, no Christian Benford, at some point corners rotating a little bit, you saw what happens when you take good players off a team for players that aren't as good. Shockingly, the defense isn't as good. There were communication breakdowns. There were guys, I mean, Dorian Williams in the second quarter, you could almost see his head spinning 360 degrees in the field. He was just not ready to be in that game or be playing that role at least. But you're the former Division I corner. Let's start at corner here. I thought Dane Jackson had an okay game leaving the field, and I thought Kyrie Irving didn't play well. Really, I don't think either one of those guys had a good game.
Well, for one, I thought Dane was okay, but then watching it back, the Bills made Elam the boundary corner for 95% of the game until the fourth quarter, which puts him in more man situations, and he's the one that's going to have to go up against the alpha.
Which should fit his strengths.
Correct.
Yeah.
Dane was the corner away from the passing strength.
The field corner.
The field corner, so he's not going to be in man reps where it's obvious when he gets beat. Having said that, that game plan clearly didn't work. The Bills basically just tried to say, hey, Elam, beat Trey White, basically, right? It didn't work well. Having said that, Calvin Ridley's a dude. He's always been a dude.
Right.
I mean, we've just forgotten because one year was mental health and the next year was his gambling suspension. He's reminded folks real quick that he's in that upper echelon of dudes. But that wasn't encouraging to see. The reps weren't great in the passing game, but I think it was the running game. I mean, he missed like 4 or 5 tackles.
Kyrie Elam.
Yeah, this off tackle where you're like, man, I know the guy went down like 4 or 5 yards later, but that wasn't encouraging. You didn't affect him at all. And that's why he got benched.
Yeah, I counted at least 3 blatant missed tackles from Elam, on top of the fact that, you know, that Ridley was beating him so bad that late third quarter, fourth quarter, it felt like Jacksonville was targeting him. Like, let's just run Ridley out there wherever 24 is, which was to the boundary side a lot, and we'll just do whatever you want, Calvin. We'll throw you the ball because you're going to be open. I mean, the sack fumble play that we just talked about before, Calvin Ridley's on the far side, and I mean, like 3 yards open in the end zone. You know, so beyond the ones that you all saw at home, folks, there were more where Elam wasn't playing well. And again, Dane didn't play very well also. In addition to that, the Jags did a much better job exploiting the zone coverage than the Bills did the Jacksonville zone coverage. Both teams played. I think we saw like maybe 10% man reps in the whole game, something like that, maybe a little more. Jacksonville did a really nice job about, especially their favorite thing to do was the run, say left side of the field, run somebody vert, drive a corner deep, and then on the right, cross over, and then exploit that space that's left underneath. They had at least 3 15 to 20-yard plays just doing that all day long. And there were miscommunications. There was, I don't know if you noticed this, third quarter, there was a rep where Dane Jackson and Micah Hyde are on the same side. They've got 2 guys running verts at him, and Dane is yelling at Micah to, like, take this guy, take this guy. And I thought he wanted Micah to go take the outside receiver or the number 1 receiver. And Micah stayed on the number 2, which me watching I think would be his correct, thing to do. And then Dane's guy is left open and converted like a 3rd and long. So they weren't on the same page. They weren't very good. Jacksonville was better at exploiting it. Trevor Lawrence had a very solid game. I mean, the litany of things that went wrong, even with Micah Hyde and Jordan Poyer on the field, is extensive for a defense that's been, and it really still was in this game, pretty good.
They were pretty good. I'm just concerned on, so the first 4 weeks, the Bills took it to teams. That was their way of playing defense. They were playing a really aggressive zone defense, and then they would play timely man coverage and still bring pressure behind it. I wonder now because Benford has shown that he's a serviceable corner, but he hasn't shown that he's some guy that you're willing to just live on an island type of guy, right?
I think he's better than serviceable. He's been solid,
correct,
but he's not a number 1.
And that's, I think, where this predicament that the Bills are going to be in because they were so successful in that first realm, right, where they were aggressive and they can take and punch you in the mouth. But then that changes because now we're missing a guy, a will linebacker, who can also make everyone correct in the front seven. And then also, like we talked about in this space last week, you're going to miss Trey White on those key third downs or on those key situations where everyone in the building knows who's getting the ball. Well, if you needed a better example of that, no other than Micah Hyde guarding Calvin Ridley with the game on the line.
3rd and 4, whatever it was, yeah.
I mean, there's no better explanation than the Bills didn't trust none of the corners. You can say what you want about Kyer. They didn't trust Dane. They didn't trust Jamarcus. They trusted a guy whose best job is playing deep middle safety to go stop Calvin Ridley. That's where I'm concerned with them going forward.
And you think about, their schedule is not riddled with elite level Calvin Ridley type receivers. Like next 2 weeks, Giants, Patriots don't have one. Bucks, you could argue Mike Evans was that maybe 2-3 years ago, maybe not so much now. But you still got Jamar Chase in the schedule. You got another game with Garrett Wilson. You got to play A.J. Brown. You got to play CeeDee Lamb, Keenan Allen, and of course one more game with the Miami duo. So there's plenty of landmines on there to where that lack of an elite corner is going to hurt. And we've had this full discussion, haven't really talked about what the Bills are going to do without Matt Milano, which is another problem because Dorian Williams got the first shot and was out like that because he could not tackle. And Terrell Dotson came in and made a couple plays, but I thought Dotson was the one primarily at fault for Travis Etienne's long touchdown late that sealed it.
He just missed the tackle.
Just missed the tackle. He's in the hole. You got to make that play. I think Dotson certainly has the higher floor of the remaining linebackers on this team. Dorian might have the higher ceiling, but the risk with putting him on the field, as we saw, is exceptionally high. So now you're talking about, and to be honest, we've kind of had a conversation about Terrell Bernard. Hey, he's been good. He's doing all these things right, and it probably helps to have Matt Milano next to him. You saw it in this game because Bernard in this game was a problem as a tackler too. So doesn't mean Bernard's going to be that all the time, but you got to imagine when there's no Matt Milano next to you, there's a whole lot more thinking going on, less reacting, less making plays.
I remember all the plays that Terrell Bernard has made this year, they've kind of all been down the field. Now, he did help out with a Tua interception, running the seam a little bit, but they've all been attacking, and in this game, he wasn't attacking as much, probably because of scheme, and you're missing Matt Milano, so you want to get away from that a little bit. But when he missed that tackle against Travis Etienne in space, where I believe it was right before half, and the sack fumble drive, excuse me.
Yep.
That was an example of, like, all right, you're in space now. Matt Milano's not here to help you out anymore. I need you to be a dude and make a play, and he didn't in that game, in that situation. You hope that you don't have two problems at linebacker because, boy, they're going to have issues if that's the case.
I don't think Bernard's going to be a long-term problem, but you can see the effect of not having the All-Pro next to him right there. Anything else for you on defense?
No, I just, as a corner, I didn't want to watch that tape, and I don't want to watch it ever again.
The one thing I do want to add on offense, by the way, James Cook is now a red flag as a blitz pickup guy. He had 2 or 3 egregious misses. Now, he had a couple good reps too, but prior to this game, really prior to this year, I thought Cook was fine as a blitz pickup guy. Maybe not the best, but fine. There have been some misses leading up to this, not a lot, but they were bad enough in this game to where if I'm the Bills, I need to consider having him off the field for third down. And if you got to have him off the field for third down, what's the point of having him as your number one back? So that's something that needs to be, at least, we have to keep an eye on that.
The blitz pickup, and then also he just dropped the pass on the first drive of the game.
Then let me ask you, I thought that one was...
It was a tough throw.
It wasn't a great throw either. Yeah.
But if we're going to need you to be a dude and, like, if we draft you to be this pass-catching back,
you better be able to catch passes.
You better be able to. Now, granted, like, once again, I'm not dinging him and say, oh, I can take him off the field for driving that, because Damian Harris and Latavius Murray not making that play either, I don't think. For sure. But the blitz pickup was alarming. There was a lot of times where he's just on the ground. I'm like, where is he on the ground for? Oh, he tried to cut somebody in the back. They're still running. So that wasn't pretty for sure.
All right. As you might imagine, a surprising loss. Did not elude many positive comments from us. I will tell you this, spoiler alert for next week, I'm pretty sure there'll be a lot of positives coming out of this Bills-Giants game because I don't know how much Giants you've watched. I watched quite a bit of them the last couple of days. They ain't good. They ain't good.
No, not at all. Bad football over there.
All right, that conversation for next week. Until then, for Carl Jones, I'm Thad Brown. Thanks for watching Let's Talk Ball. You can find this every single week at RochesterFirst.com and wherever you get your podcasts.